So thanks for joining today. I'm Madeline Postman from Grain Sustainability. And our mission is to help businesses become champions for people and the planet. We started in 2002 as a branding and design consultancy. And over the years, we've shifted our focus to sustainability to align our personal values more with our work. And today, I'm really proud to say that we work 100% in sustainability consulting and communications. We have a growing team, currently about 12 people, mostly in the UK, but also with some people in Canada, South Africa, and the Netherlands. So quite an international team. And also very proud to say, of course, in context of today, that we just got our own B Corp certification. We also have a 3D printer just a few weeks ago, at the beginning of January. So that's really exciting to have that. Last autumn, I trained to become a B leader. So that means that we can help other companies become B Corps, which is, of course, the point of the talk today, is to give you information about the process. And of course, we're always here to help as well. So I do tend to speak a little bit too quickly, so you might have a lot of time at the end for questions. I timed the talk coming in at about 30 minutes or so. I'll try to speak a little bit more slowly, so it'll be maybe 40 minutes, but there will be ample time for questions. And I would just ask to save the questions until the end, because I think hopefully I'll be answering quite a lot of the questions you might have along the way, including some of the questions that were posed in the Eventbrite ticket link. So again, for the latest covers on the call, this will be recorded. I'll be sending it out to everybody who has a ticket afterwards. It'll be available on our website as well, in terms of sort of gathering up the information. So here we go. Just sharing my screen. There, so everyone can see the screen. Yeah, great. So what is a B Corp? B Corp stands for Certified B Corporation. So it is pronounced Corp, not Core. And what does the B stand for? Originally, it stood for Benefit Corporation, which is a legal status of some companies. Well, I should say of the legal status available in some countries. Not all countries. So in the US, for example, where B Corp started, there is a legal corporate structure called benefit corporations. Over the years, this has been widened to mean also be, as in be the change you wish to see in the world, a quote attributed to Gandhi, which of course, when you research it, maybe it wasn't quite what he said, but I think we get the gist of it. And it also can stand for better. So that's what the B stands for. The concept was started in 2006 when three friends, Jay Cohen Gilbert, Bart Houlihan, and Andrew Cassoy founded a nonprofit called B Lab in the US, following the sale of their company, which was called And One, which was owned by Gilbert and Houlihan. So they quickly saw after the sale that all of their commitments to their employees, their overseas workers, and local community quickly went down the drain. So they really wanted to make a difference. And they founded this nonprofit B Lab in 2006. And then the first B Corps were certified in 2007. Today, there are more than 4,500 B Corps around the globe. So in terms of the concept, in 1994, John Elkington coined the phrase, the triple bottom line, which you've probably all heard. So that's not just profits, but people and planet, as well as profits. And also in terms of a concept, the 20th century concept of companies is for them to exist solely for the purpose of their shareholders. And this is a very short-term view. It's for the few, and it's an extractive concept as well. There's a 21st century concept of stakeholder value, which is pretty much the opposite of the shareholder concept. So the stakeholder concept is long-term, it's for everyone, and it's regenerative. So this concept of working for the benefit of all stakeholders, not just shareholders, is what B Corp is all about. So as I just mentioned, there are more than 4,500 B Corps around the globe now, so it's really gaining momentum. Currently, Danone North America is the biggest B Corp. They said on a podcast a target in 2020 that they wanted all of Danone globally to become a B Corp by 2025. So that would make it pretty massive. The Brazilian group that owns the Body Shop, which itself is a B Corp, called Natura & Co, is also getting certified at a group level. So that would make it the biggest B Corp in the world. Many B Corps are smaller businesses. Some other well-known B Corps are The Guardian, Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's, and Triodos Bank. And I was eating my divine chocolate earlier, and that's a B Corp as well. And I was sort of wondering, maybe B Corps don't have any calories in them. I don't know if that's a sort of a side benefit or not, but there do seem to be quite a lot of retail and sort of food companies that are B Corps, but I think it's sort of because those are the ones that you see in the high street and on the packaging and things like that. But it is, we'll see, it's not just a sort of B2C offering, it's for any type of company. So, so this is the B Corp Declaration of Interdependence. It sort of says everything in such a good way that I'll just take a moment and read it out loud. We envision a global economy that uses business as a force for good. This economy is comprised of a new type of corporation, the B Corporation, which is purpose-driven and creates benefit for all stakeholders, not just shareholders. As B corporations and leaders of this emerging economy, we believe that we must be the change we seek in the world, that all business ought to be conducted as if people and place mattered, that through their products, practices, and profits, businesses should aspire to do no harm and benefit all. To do so requires that we act with the understanding that we are each dependent upon another and thus responsible for each other and future generations. So yeah, really powerful statement. And this is when you become a B Corp, you sign this Declaration of Interdependence. So who can become a B Corp? Of course, the question isn't really who can become a B Corp, but what kind of entity can become a B Corp? Any for-profit company of any size, anywhere in the world, can theoretically become a B Corp. Other types of organizations like charities or government bodies can still use the B Impact Assessment, which we'll look at shortly, as a strategic tool to ensure that they're benefiting all stakeholders, but they can't become B Corps. A company needs to be operational for 12 months to be a fully fledged B Corp. And before that, if a company has met the requirements to become a B Corp, it gets the status of pending B Corporation. So if you ever see the pending B Corp around, it doesn't mean that you've submitted to become a B Corp and you're waiting for your verification or your certification. It means that the company's not been operational for 12 months yet. So once it's operational for 12 months, then it would become a fully fledged B Corp. So I said that any for-profit company can theoretically become a B Corp, but what if, for example, there's an oil and gas company, or you're involved in mining or cannabis. So there's this controversial issues page. You can Google this, or we will set up a page on our sites, which we'll send out to everybody over the next few days with all of these useful links in it. So most of what I'm showing will be linked to on this page, so you don't have to sort of take too many notes if you don't want to. So there's this page on controversial issues and industries, and B Lab has a statement on these issues, and these come to light in the disclosure questionnaire, which is part of the B Impact Assessment. So to take the example of fossil fuels, a company that earns revenue from coal mining would be ineligible to become a B Corp, but a company that has currently a minimum of 50% renewable energy and a formal targets and transition plan in line with science-based targets can be considered contingent on the responses in the rest of the B Impact Assessment. Nobody ever said that becoming a B Corp is easy. Disqualifying factors that will just disqualify you outright include having more than 1% of revenues from involvement in the industries of coal, pornography, casinos, firearms, weapons or munitions, and or tobacco, without a formal commitment to exit those industries. So that brings to mind the United States Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. I don't think they perform very well on the controversial issues page. So what are the benefits of becoming a B Corp? The B Corp certification is comprehensive, examining the areas of governance, workers, community, environment, and customers. It's cross-sector and international, which means that it's recognized as a badge of honor in many different contexts. Going through the process is rigorous, and it provides opportunities for engagement at all levels, with all kinds of internal and external stakeholder engagement. Speaking with employees, customers, suppliers, communities, governments, and nonprofits, just to name a few. It's practically impossible to go through the process without making significant improvements to your company, keeping healthy that triple bottom line of people, planet, and profits. It's proven that engaged employees are happier and more productive, and the B Corp status can help with the recruitment and retention of great people who have high expectations of their employers. Much of the certification is based on transparency and good governance, and this trustworthiness is indispensable in the age of greenwashing. It can also help with attracting capital. The market for socially responsible investing is between $400 billion and $1 trillion, according to JP Morgan, with recent indications putting that figure even higher at $2.1 trillion. Another benefit of becoming a B Corp is that once you are a B Corp, there's access to a thriving community with forums and networking and opportunities for partnerships and discounts from fellow B Corps. Much of this is accessible on the Beehive, which again, you have access to as soon as you become a B Corp. So what are the steps to get there? I'd say step number one is make yourself a cup of tea. It takes quite a long time to get through this. So depending on the size of your company, you can nominate a group. You could call it the B team. That was something I heard in a recent webinar from B Lab that drives the process forward. You can do it all internally, or you can work with a consultant like ourselves, a B leader, someone who's been through the process before. For the people or roles who should be included on this team, think about the impact areas in the BIA, the B Impact Assessment. Again, it's governance, workers, community, environment, and customers. So for governance, you could think of your leadership roles, workers, maybe somebody in HR, community could be marketing or some kind of community outreach position. Environment could be somebody from operations, procurement, or health and safety. Customers could be somebody from sales or account management. In a small company, these roles could all sit with one or two people potentially. The way that we recommend approaching the B Impact Assessment is blocking out some time in your diary, for example, 2 hours over 3 consecutive days, like 3 consecutive Fridays, for example, just to give that time in your diary where you're dedicated to the BIA. And again, lots of tea or coffee to get you through it. So the first step is you go to the B Impact Assessment. Again, Google this, it's quite easy to find. You fill in your details to have an account on the B Impact Assessment on the tool. You can have, if you're working with multiple companies, you can have more than one company accessible through this. This is a free tool. Again, you can use this even if you're a nonprofit. And setting up a company here, but nobody's going to look at it until you submit. So it doesn't put you under any obligation to become a B Corp or to submit to become a B Corp. And so you should feel free to explore it and play around with it. You'll see there's a lot of work just using it as a sort of live tool. So your answers as you set up the company will put you on a specific track. The way the track is determined is, first of all, whether you're in an emerging market or a developed market. So here you've got, well, the questions are your location is one of the first questions. So that places you in whichever market is suitable. Then you've got the 5 sectors: services with a minor environmental footprint, services with a major environmental footprint, wholesale or retail, manufacturing, and agriculture or growers. And then you've got 6 different sizes of employees. So this is full-time employee or full-time equivalent. So if you've got even subcontractors or part-time workers, then that puts you into these different tracks. And just to note that the 0 size is if you've got, for example, directors who are employees but no other workers, that can put you in a 0 track, and then you wouldn't have the workers part of the assessment, but then the rest of the assessment would be weighted differently according to that. So let's see. So if, for example, each of the 5 sectors has an industry category below that. So you've got 5 of these. Below those, you've got industry categories. And below the industry categories, you have specific industries. So for example, if you select wholesale or retail, the next industry category below that is either wholesale or retail. And then under that, for example, you could choose apparel as your industry within that. So I haven't done the total of how many different those are, but it's probably, I'm guessing, a couple hundred different industries that you would choose. So those get very specific at that level. So once you're in, so this is the B impact assessment here, but then within the BIA, there's a BIA. That's the actual assessment, because within this actual platform, there's a lot of other, there are a lot of other tools, and then there's the notifications and lots of other bits to it. So once you're in there to actually fill out the BIA, you click on that, and then you find those 5 impact areas, plus a disclosure questionnaire. So, and this disclosure questionnaire is where those controversial issues that we looked at could get picked up on. So you probably heard about needing to score a minimum of 80 points to become a B Corp, and there's a maximum of 200 points, which is pretty much impossible to get. Even a company which is like a amazing company like Patagonia, they've got 151.4 points. So I haven't really seen much beyond that level. When you are filling out the BIA, you really want to aim more for about 85 to 90 points, because as you go through the verification process, the points can move around, even if you've misunderstood a question, or maybe you've put something that's a bit more aspirational, like I'd really love things to be like this, but it's not actually like that currently. So give yourself a bit of padding in terms of when you're ready to submit. So some of the questions don't have any points associated with them. So it's not like there are 200 questions and you get 1 point per question. Some have no points. So for example, there are governance metrics that include company turnover and profit. So even if, let's say, you're running at a loss, that's not going to affect your points at all. So speaking about profit and turnover, all answers on the BIA should be filled in according to your last financial year. So the BIA is sort of in a way, a snapshot of where you are during that financial year. And there might be some questions that come up about that, so we can talk about that a little bit more later. And you will need to provide supporting documentation for some of your questions. That should be fairly clear as you're going through the assessment, and also during the verification, that's when they ask for more documentation on specific questions. So going a little bit more into detail, this is an example of one question from the environment section. So you can see the question, how does your company encourage good environmental stewardship and how employees manage their virtual offices? So you've got different choices. So you can have a written policy about environmental stewardship in virtual offices, sharing resources with employees, having a policy in place for safe disposal of e-waste and other hazardous materials, and providing employees with a list of environmentally preferred vendors for office supplies. So if you just tick one of those, you'll get 0.7 out of 2.8 points. So this is from our own assessment. So your assessment, the weighting of that particular question might be a little bit different depending on your track and lots of other factors. So that's an example of that that one. And then if you tick, in our case, we have all four. So we got the maximum 2.8 points there. So you can see out of 80 points, that's pretty significant, just that one question. And those are also, pretty easy. It's sort of the low-hanging fruit in terms of getting these things in place. It's funny because you start thinking about all these improvements in terms of points. It's a bit gamified, I guess. So another aspect of the B impact assessment, which is really interesting, it's part of the whole concept behind B Corp, is using something called impact business models, just to give us another acronym or initialism or whatever you call it. So some of the questions on the BIA, the B impact assessment, are gateway questions for these impact business models that then lead to other questions. So generally the gateway questions don't have any points associated with them, but then the questions you get after that will have points associated with them. So here everyone gets the same set for the track of these questions that are the operational impacts, and these are with the white backgrounds. The impact business models are these with the colored backgrounds, and most companies won't have an impact business model. And if there is an impact business model, you might just have a mix of one or two of them. And we'll come back to this mission lock in a little bit. But for example, we do have an impact business model, and it's the impact improvement for our customers, because as sustainability consultants, that's the aim of what we're doing. So that's our impact business model for Grain. So you will get impact business model questions, these sort of gateway questions, at the beginning of each of these four impact areas: workers, community, environment, and customers. And so these are a couple of examples of operational impact. So, bits from the white background versus the impact business model. So for example, recycling, if you recycle waste, that's a positive impact in terms of operations. Whereas if your business model is actually to be selling recycling services or technology, that's the impact business model. Donations, if you sort of simply donate to charity, that's more of an operational impact. Whereas if you have a buy one, give one model, that's a more fundamental business model. And that, that gives you more points, the impact business model, than the operational impact. And then an example from our own assessment. So we've got the impact business model score of 31. Again, we'll look back at the mission. We have basically 10 points from the mission lock that we'll talk about later. And then in terms of the gateway question, so customer impact business model introduction, do any of your company's products or services address a social or economic problem for your customers and or their beneficiaries? So again, because we're doing sustainability consulting, yes, that's what we do. If you don't understand the question, which is probably the case on almost all the questions, sometimes they're just not very straightforward, click on the Learn More button, which is available for every single question. And then it gives you more information. Quite a few of the Learn More explanations also have the relevant United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. So the SDGs are also in the question saying, oh, this refers back to SDG, whatever it is. So this sort of Learn More button is going to become your best friend while you fill out the BIA. So another really good element of the platform or the tool is the question filter, because you'll see that you've got sort of hundreds of questions, and you might have a hard time knowing where you are, not knowing the points of them, lots of different sort of attributes around the questions. And just to point out here that you can bookmark a question. So sometimes when we had something we weren't sure about or that we wanted to improve, we would bookmark that. So when you go into the question filter, you can, under attributes, you can look at bookmarked questions. You can find questions that haven't been answered yet. You can filter questions by points, looking for the easy wins, question type, all of that is here. So it's a really powerful aspect to the platform. And here, just for example, what are the impact area questions? You can filter those as well. So that's a really good thing to take note of. Another helpful aspect, because you can't really search the B impact assessment. So I remember with one client, there was a question about cost of goods sold, but I couldn't, are you selling locally? And so I just remember that I wanted to look for COGS, cost of goods sold, and there wasn't really an easy way to find that. So if you download your whole B impact assessment, it downloads as a spreadsheet, and then you can search the spreadsheet. So you go into that and then you just do a search for whichever words, like volunteering or whatever. And then it's a lot easier. Then it shows you at least the section that you're in, and then you can find the question that you're looking for. You can also print your PDF. Ours is 38 pages long. I don't know why you would want to print it, but if you feel like printing it, that's another option as well. Another thing about the spreadsheet is that it makes it a lot easier to integrate into your own system. So you could take that and upload it to Trello or whatever you're using in your own systems, and you could start to make a roadmap out of that if it's easier for you to use a spreadsheet or some other system rather than using the BIA itself. One way to use the BIA itself is to set goals. So if you, in each question, you can click on the star, and that the star is a goal. So once you click on that, you can say, we have a goal to, you don't even need to add in, what you want your goal to be exactly, but you can just say, I want to set that as a goal to track our scope 3 emissions. And you can say, I'll put a due date of 1 month, 3 months, whatever, or your own specific due date. And then you can put a tick if you want to receive email reminders. And the way the reminders work is you can add team members to your BIA. So this would be if you've signed up for more than one company, your team members would just be for that specific company. So that works on a company basis, so they wouldn't have access to your whole, if you're managing different companies. And once you set up a team member, you can then they can either receive notifications or not receive notifications. So that those goals, for example, whoever's receiving the notifications will get that email coming through, as well as all of the notifications on the progress of your submission and verification. So again, any of these sort of communications that come from the BIA would go to those particular team members. But at the same time, we would suggest that there's somebody clearly in charge of filling in the BIA, because if you can imagine, if different people start messing with it or playing with it and changing answers around, it's going to change your points around, and you won't, there's a sort of version control, so you won't know what's been changed, and it can get really messy. So you could fill it in, in one scenario, download it as a spreadsheet, so you've got your answers, fill in something else. So it's, in terms of the management, just be careful with that if you've got a big team accessing it. So the other requirement you might have heard of to become a B Corp, besides having the minimum 80 points, is actually changing your company's legal structure. So this is part of, well, the legal documents, not the legal structure. This is part of what's called the mission lock, and that's under the governance section. And this is legally ensuring that your company keeps social and environmental performance as part of its decision-making. So in the UK, this means changing your articles of association. Different countries have different legal requirements, and you can look up the requirements for any country on the B Lab knowledge base. Obviously, every country has its own legal structures. So, and that mission lock gives you up to 10 points. So again, out of your 80 points, that's quite a lot, because it is really key to becoming a B Corp, that you're not just working, again, for the shareholders, but you're working for all stakeholders. And to do this, there's a really good free website called Purposely. The URL, again, this will be on our links. It's getpurpose.ly. And you can go through that and fill in some questions, and then basically it comes out with your new articles of association. So it's a great tool. And so we use that to change our own articles of association. Then you file those with Companies House together with Form CC04, which is the statement of companies' objects, and the special resolution saying that the directors have accepted these new articles of association. So this is from Grain's Companies House. You can just see we've got the special resolution, we've got the Form CC04, and then the memorandum about that. So that's the legal bit. So it sounds a bit daunting, but it's actually not that difficult. So how long does all of this take, both to complete the BIA and what happens after that? So those initial 6 hours spent on the BIA, which is the suggested 3 sessions of 2 hours each, are just the beginning. And it's hard to put a number on how many hours it will take any individual company to be ready for submission. We put about 40 or 50 hours into it. We've written a post about it, which I'll link to, of course. So in getting from wherever your baseline is to about the 90 points you want to submit, you will probably have gone through the BIA multiple times, and you will have formalized a lot of processes and approaches that you probably have in place already. So some of the quick wins could be creating a code of ethics, writing purchasing policies, committing to sourcing from local or underrepresented groups, making a working from home policy, and limiting business travel. Some longer term goals that you might not be accomplishing right now, but that you could sort of earmark, could be including social and environmental goals into performance reviews or compensation structures, increasing diversity at all levels, and increasing wages. So once you've filled in the whole BIA and uploaded any documentation requested, you can submit it. And you need to pay £250 plus VAT to join the evaluation queue. And that money is really just, they didn't used to have that fee, and then all kinds of companies would submit that wouldn't qualify. And it takes B Lab a lot of resource to go through the application. So it's essentially to keep out time wasters and to cover some of that cost of the evaluation and the verification. So in terms of timing expectations, it depends on your company size. These are all just guideline numbers. There's a basic, there's a very different process for the large companies of £100 million plus, who have more than 250 employees and which operate in 2 or more industries, or operate in 5 or more countries, or have 5 or more subsidiaries. So I won't go into that at all. Otherwise, if you're in what they call the standard enterprise, there are different categories: micro, small, medium, and medium. Sounds like t-shirts or something. And that timing varies. Essentially, it's faster the smaller the company is, which kind of makes sense. This is the timing. So this is directly from the knowledge base, from B Lab. So once you hit submit, you might have to wait for up to 9 months before they even look at your application. The evaluation is a sort of basic, making sure that you're eligible. Also, I think they would look at the controversial issues at that time. That's up to 3 months. Verification queue, that's when you get assigned, at the end of that time, you get assigned to a specific person who's an analyst. for the verification. And then during the verification, you go through in detail. So we had 14 of our questions were pulled out and asked for more documentation of those. We actually sort of changed the financial year when we were reporting because of the way our business had been a bit dormant and then came back to life again. And then, so you're basically submitting, there's a lot of back and forth and you're submitting more documentation. And then if you need improvement, this isn't always needed, another 3 months for that. And then you basically get the email saying you've been approved, and then you need to sign the Declaration of Interdependence. You pay your annual fee, and they give you access to the beehive and the branding guidelines of how you can use the logo, the certified B Corp logo. So doing the maths, it takes, it could take 2 years from submission to certification. The reason why the little frog is there is because smaller can be better in this case. We started the whole process at the end of June last year. We submitted our BIA on September 1st, and we got certified at the beginning of January. So it was, really, it was basically 6 months, which is quite fast. So let's see. So how much does it cost? So of course you've got the £250 to submit, and then the annual fees depend on your turnover. Again, all available on the B Lab website. Quite straightforward. You pay that every year. If you are a 1% for the Planet member, so through 1% for the Planet, business members give 1% of their turnover to environmental nonprofits. So already that's probably boosted your score quite a bit in the community's impact area. And then these fees for B Lab, those go toward your 1% donation as well. So your 1% of your revenue, this isn't quite 1%, but all of those fees go toward that 1% donation for 1% for the Planet. So it's a nice way to work together. And there are a lot of companies that are members of both. As you could expect. So besides the time invested, some other areas where you might need investment are, you might want to hire a new employee, like a sort of sustainability manager role. You might be raising your employees' wages to make sure everyone's paid at least the living wage. You might be investing more on employee training, like a workshop on equity, diversity, and inclusion, for example. You might be increasing employee benefits, including health and wellness initiatives. You might be have paid volunteer days for your team, donating to nonprofits, and you might be doing more work on your business on the environmental level with the materiality assessment, putting in place an environmental management system, buying electric vehicles, installing charging points, making your premises more energy efficient. You might be putting into place a net zero strategy or carbon, not necessarily offsetting, but more specifically carbon capture and storage. So those are some other investment areas. And so what happens once you're certified? So you, of course, you have a big celebration. You've then got about 2 years to recover from your celebration. At which point you should start on the recertification process. So every 3 years, you need to recertify. So you would go through the BIA again, showing improvement. So it's still the 80 points minimum. And it's a really good idea to use the BIA as a living strategy tool that can be, so it's locked while you're being verified, and then it sort of unlocks again, and you can keep working with it as you make improvements. And it's just, it's there for your use, and as you've seen, I keep saying it's a very powerful tool. So a few more resources, and then I'll open up to questions. There's a knowledge base, which has a lot of information on it. Again, this is all free, with best practice guides and some other pages on best practices. Another section of the tool, which is sort of linked to it, but separate, is the Sustainable Development Goal Action Manager. So that's something for you to use just internally. Nobody from B Lab looks at that, on a specific, they might aggregate information, but you're not submitting this to anybody. So it's a great way to look at your strategy and how it aligns with SDGs. You could use it for your communications. So that's another area of the BIA. And yeah, hopefully the talk has inspired you to use business as a force for good. If you want to read our post about a bit more specific around our own journey, you can take a photo of that. That goes straight to the link on our site. Of course, that'll be linked on the page that I send out within a few days as well. And then these are some, the QR code is my LinkedIn profile if you want to connect there, and then some other places to find grain online. So, and obviously we'd love to help you with your own B Corp journey too. So I haven't looked at the chat at all. Let's just see, I will quickly look at that. Yeah, Vanessa, do you want to ask your questions?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So yes, thank you. I've got two questions. And it's probably I don't know, the experience of people who have done it before. How does it change the culture or the way that people work in a company once they are a B Corp? Or it's just a way of actually saying, we've done the journey, we're there? Or does it change what's happening in the future? And my second question is, do you know if they are, I know that in France and Italy, they have similar standards. So, do we know if they are very different and B Corp is the more demanding? I don't know whether you can answer this question or not.
Yeah. So the company culture, I would say, if you do it well, it's an amazing way to engage with employees, because they can be, they should be sort of, I was going to say brought along for the ride, but they're not. They're like, I can't make my metaphor work, but I mean they're part of the whole journey, and they're shaping it. If you think that the workers area is a whole section of the BIA, but then there, in terms of governance and community, all of the areas, the employees are really part of that. It's the work that they're doing. So it can really help in terms of how much they're involved with the company, how it can shape what the company does and how it operates. So it's just like an amazing way to engage employees and help how they can shape the company and its impacts. So you should have all those benefits of employee engagement and productivity and innovation. And in terms of the international aspects, so B Lab is they're showing. So there's B Lab Global, and then you've got the different B Labs. So there's a B Lab US and Canada, there's B Lab UK, B Lab Europe, and then there are different partners in different countries as well. And depending on where you're submitting, there are also, the BIA is available in different languages. So I think I found one screen that had like French, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, German. So there, it is available in different languages as well. The standards would be the same globally, and then it's more the tracks that change the question. So it's the developed markets, emerging markets, the industry, all of that. But the standards are global, and they're aligned with other frameworks like the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative. So B Lab works really closely. There are tons of different frameworks and certifications, but B Lab is working closely with all of the major ones, Future Fit, I think CDP, the Carbon Disclosure Project as well, to make sure that it's an international standard. So let's see, I'm just going to look through, can charities apply to become a B Corp. No, it's only for-profit companies, but charities can use the BIA as a great tool to improve. And answer the languages. Do goals count toward the BIA score? No, the goals are just for your own use. So the BIA, you need to show what your where the company is already. You can have some of the questions say, do you have targets in place? So yes, that does count toward the score. But the goals you set up in the BIA, like, we aim to have this in place by whatever, that wouldn't count. So I think it's backtracking a little bit. It's, in a way, it sort of depends a bit on the question, because some of the questions do have goals. They tend to be more on the environmental side for those, because like in governance, like, do you aim to be whatever, do you aim to have an advisory board or something? That wouldn't count. But in terms of environmental goals for reductions and things like that, that does count toward, positively toward the score. Let's see. So yes, Sabrina, once you have filled in the assessment and added documents, will B Corp also have some kind of audit to check if it's all okay? I think I answered that during the talk, but it's basically, there is a pretty robust verification. So the analyst that you're assigned to, or that's assigned to you, they go through this all in detail. So you have to show your homework, definitely. So, and it's not for every question. They pick out some of the key questions. Catherine, do you want to ask yours about tax?
Thanks very much. This was really informative. I've learned so much. My question was about what's the sort of goal for growth of the B Corp movement? Is there an interest in, for example, demonstrate that a substantial proportion of companies incorporated in X jurisdiction have shown their interest and their energies towards these goals, and therefore someone should do something about goal of the.
Your connection's not great, Catherine, unfortunately. It kind of is going in and out, but I'm not sure of the, I'm sure that B Lab has goals, but I don't know what their targets are. I know that there are, for example, I was chatting with somebody from B Lab UK, and we were talking about B Corp, like the fact that there are a lot of the retail, the B2C B Corps tend to be more visible just by the nature of retail itself. And we were talking about the more B2B side, and he was looking at B Corp in the built environment. So there have been some webinars around that led by I think they're led by B Lab UK. So they definitely have, they're always looking at how to grow. They work a lot with partners and other bodies to make sure that it's something that gets embedded in different areas. There's also a boardroom initiative around diversity in the boardroom. I think it's called Boardroom 2030. So there, and as I mentioned, also the work with the different frameworks like GRI. So there is a lot of partnership, but just as a short answer to your question, I don't know what their goals are in terms of growth. Yeah. Okay, let's see. I hope everyone can still hear me, because Catherine just said she can't hear me, but I think that might have to do with her connection. Okay, thanks, Anne. So we have 10 minutes. Happy to answer some more questions.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
I just wanted to know if it's a charity or a very small business that perhaps can't afford to pay the fees and go through the whole process. You said you could do the assessment, but would you then also send it in and get some sort of, or do you just measure yourself against their standards?
So if there's a charity, you wouldn't be able to submit anyway. But there is a benchmarking tab within the B impact assessment as well. So you could see sort of the, you as a charity, you pretend that you're a company in terms of the industry that you select. And then you could see what your score is. But again, you wouldn't be able to submit, for example, if it was a small company that struggled to pay the fees. There's one element that I'm aware of, which is I think it's a 40% discount on the fees if the ownership is from an underrepresented group. So I think it's if 50% of the ownership or more is from an underrepresented group. And that's underrepresented in many ways. I mean, it's basically if you're not like a cis hetero white man, more or less, is a bit flippant, but you're likely to fall into an underrepresented group. So there is that possible discount on the annual fees. And I'm not sure if there's another, if a company really couldn't pay for some reason, if there's any sort of help further to that.
And just one other question. Are there similar sort of schemes worldwide, or is this really in a class of its own? I mean, how does it compare to other schemes, and what is the benefits?
Yeah, I mean, it is really unique in the fact that it's cross-sector, it's international, it's for all different sizes of companies. So in terms of other certifications that are out there, you've got the ones that focus on, well, the other also is very broad in terms of the 5 impact areas. There are plenty of other certifications that might just be environmental, like ISO 14001 environmental management system. There are a lot around carbon and net zero. There are others around financial reporting, like TCFD. The environmental ones like SECR and ESOS. So that sort of kick in at different company sizes, but they're just environmental. There are similar ones on the social side, but in terms of, and then you've got sort of basic compliance as well, for things like governance. But in terms of the breadth of what's covered, the fact that it's cross-sector, the fact that it's international, it is unique. So I mean, not quite similar, but 1% for the planet, I think is interesting in the fact that it's for any business or individual, and currently it's for environmental nonprofits, even though it's opening up a bit more to be sort of social and environmental, but it's not, it's not as robust as B Corp.
Great, thank you very much. I'm sorry my camera is not working.
Oh, I can see you.
Oh, okay, I can't see myself. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you. There was a question submitted on Eventbrite that said, what can we do now to get started? Which I think, hopefully I've covered the fact that you can just start. I mean, I would really encourage you, if you have any curiosity about it, which of course you do because you're here, just open your account on, get a BIA account, just start playing around with it. And even for a fictitious company, if you're just here for interest and you don't have a particular company to submit for, so you can start to see the questions, and there's so much information in there. It's a good way to start. And then I was trying to look up, if you start an account and then you basically abandon it, I'm not sure when that gets deleted, because it must at some point. I know that there's a huge, there might be like 6 to 10 times more accounts than the companies that submit. But yeah, I mean, definitely open up an account and just start to play with it, definitely. And there's no time limit for when you start to do that to when you have to submit. So it's not like the clock is ticking to submit. I might say a little bit more if there is a question, just in terms of that, the financial year when you're submitting for, because so in theory, if they say, do you have a home working policy? It should have been in place already during that past financial year. But effectively, if you you could write your home working policy and have it in place, and then submit. So there is, I think the whole point of it is, you don't just say, well, we were doing this and we have, you know, this much improvement. You could say we were doing this and there was a lot in our heads. So for example, around, I don't know, diversity and inclusion, but it wasn't put in a policy around the way we hire, or, you know, whatever it might be, especially for smaller companies. There tends to be a lot that isn't necessarily written down. So, you know, use the BIA, even though you're submitting for that last financial year, use it as your roadmap, and then put those different processes and policies in place, and then you can submit. Oh, there was a question also, will we get the slides? So yeah, I'll send the slides out as well. What does B Corp do with a fee? The fees are quite high. So the fees go to B Lab, which is a nonprofit, and I haven't looked up to see like, what do you do? You know, what exactly are your sort of your accounts or whatever that might be, but I'd be a little shocked if it weren't transparent, because everything else is quite transparent about B Lab. But you can see also with all the resources they have in place, it's very well run as an organization. They've had events before, and they've got the Beehive. So you can imagine there's a lot of you know, maintenance to do on those different platforms and having the resources in place. So I would imagine that they're transparent. I haven't looked up to see what they do exactly with the fees. Great. Any other questions? Right.
Just one.
Yeah.
Just one more, Madeline. So what do you do as a company to help people, you know, become a B Corp?
Thank you for asking that. So we would help along the whole process. So we would start, if you're interested in going through the process. So we have different levels of support, from just helping you get to the BIA, so the sort of initial 6 hours, to you know, doing everything from helping you write the policies, looking at the environmental side, measuring the carbon footprint. So anything, particularly in the improvement areas, so we can be doing as much or as little of that to complement your own company's resources. So we find that some companies can sort of take the BIA and run with it. There are always some questions that are a little bit trickier, like, you know, coming up with a stakeholder engagement plan that most companies don't really do that as a matter of course. So we can help with things like that. So we provide essentially different levels of support on the B Corp journey. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. I will stop recording, and you'll get this and the slides and the links probably by early next week or so. So yeah, thanks very much for attending.